very happy to introduce Eric Sonnendrucker, who gave an English and a French title, but I guess I'll continue introducing you in English. Eric is from the Max Planck Institute in Munich and also the TU in Munich, and he will talk about magnetic fusion.
Yes, so I talk about magnetic fusion, and even though the title is high performance computing, I'm actually leading an applied math group at the Max Planck Institute for Plasma Physics, and I'm more going to talk about algorithms after having explained the application we're working for. And so this is the outline. So I'll start with the application. So I guess most of you probably have heard of this. This is controlled thermonuclear fusion. And to replace today's power plants, the idea is to use this clean nuclear technology consisting in making the fusion of a deuterium and a tritium nuclei into a fast neutron and a helium nuclei, and this happens at large temperatures, so over 100 million degrees, and provided you have high enough density for a long enough time. At these temperatures, the gas is fully ionized, and this is a good point. So what you want, you need to confine this plasma for quite a time, and this cannot happen with a material wall. But because it's charged particles, you can confine these particles in a magnetic field. So this is what you see on the lower right picture. This is the tokamak, so magnetic confinement fusion. There are actually two other ways to make fusion. So what you see on the lower left part is inertial confinement fusion. So this you can do by shooting with lasers on a target. This is a lot smaller. Then you get a lot higher density for a shorter time. But this also reaches the fusion conditions. And of course, fusion is also providing the energy of the sun. But this is another topic. So what we're working on is magnetic confinement fusion at the Max Planck Institute for Plasma Physics. We have actually two smaller institutes, one in Garching, which is a suburb of Munich. This is where I'm working, and another one in Greifswald. So this is the closest point they have found in Germany to Munich, because in Eastern Germany, but the distance is reversed. So it's on the Baltic Sea at the upper north corner. You probably know that Munich is in the southeast of Germany. And so we're working together with those people, and in our center we have the standard tokamak configuration. So this is an axisymmetric configuration where you have the plasma confined. So the yellow piece is the plasma, and in order to get confinement in a tokamak, you need a current in the tokamak, because the magnetic field, in order to be confining, cannot be purely toroidal. So you need two winds, as you see here, to wind on closed surfaces. The advantage of the stellarator configuration is that the confinement is provided by a fully 3D magnetic field, so there's no current, so it's more stable. But of course, it's quite hard to build. So you see, you need to have 3D coils, and the shape of the plasma is a lot more complicated. So this you see on the upper right part of the picture. And here I have an old picture of this stellarator. This was still the construction of the stellarator. So this is finished. It has been the first plasma happened last year. So it's a very new experiment which has started now and is going on. So in order to see whether this has better properties than the tokamak. You might have heard also, I don't have a picture of this. This fits, of course, in the bigger picture where there's this international collaboration around ITER, which is being built in the southeast of France, in order to prove that nuclear fusion is physically possible. So this is still a physics experiment, so it's not a power plant. And the smaller experiments we have here is to understand the confinement of the plasma. So there is no or hardly any fusion reactions in these experiments. There will be in ITER. Okay, so now, after having explained the physics context, I'll talk a little bit about modeling. So the tokamak plasma, this is basically a collection of charged particles. So it's a very simple very simple physics problem. So you have basically a lot of charged particles that are interacting only through the electromagnetic field. So if we forget what's happening close to the wall, it's not so hard. The problem is there's quite a few particles, so 10 to the 19 per cubic meters, and the volume of a tokamak is of course many cubic meters. So it's not possible to simulate a plasma using the basic laws of motion of charged particles. So we need reduced models, and we have in principle three kinds of reduced models that we're using. So kinetic Vlasov-Maxwell equations with collisions. So I'll go in more details on this later. And then we have a second level, so multi-fluid Euler-Maxwell. This is then a charged fluid. And then even more reduced, we have a single fluid MHD model, which is used for the most day-to-day calculations. And then there are even simpler calculations to compute wave evolution in a tokamak. So I don't want to go too much into details. So one of the main challenge we have in magnetic fusion is to make sure the problem with this plasma, so it's confined theoretically by a magnetic field. The problem plasmas is actually a very complicated matter because there are lots of instabilities occurring in plasma, so we need to mitigate these instabilities in order to be able to confine the plasma for a sufficiently long time. So we need to understand the turbulent transport in a plasma. And for this, so what's even makes it even more difficult is that standard fluid turbulence models are not good enough. So this has been proven a long time ago. If fluid turbulence models would be good enough, then fusion wouldn't work. But fortunately, it's not the case. But we need then this full phase space equation, which is the Vlasov equation, in order to model turbulence. What makes the modeling even more complicated is that we are very much bound to the geometry of our devices. So we have this toroidal geometry, and then we have this very strong magnetic field that confines the plasma, and the particles wind very, very fast along this magnetic field line. So you see here on the lower left typical particle trajectories in the plasma, and there you see on the other side you see the field lines. So you need to take into account this geometry, and because particles travel very long, very fast along the magnetic field lines, there's basically no confinement in this direction. The confinement occurs perpendicular to the field line. So this makes the results, the simulation, everything very anisotropic, and you need to take this into account, of course, when you design numerical methods for this. So one very important problem we are dealing with fluid codes is disruption. So this might be a big problem for ITER. So there are instabilities, so there's energy accumulated, and from time to time there's a blow up. And so in small tokamaks it doesn't matter so much because the amount of energy is still quite small, but if this happens for ITER, it could damage the full experiment, and this of course cannot be allowed. For this we need to understand these instabilities, and these can be simulated then with MHD models. Okay, so a little bit about HPC in the fusion community. So the fusion community is very well organized within Europe. So it's within Euratom, and there is a consortium of all the major institutes that work on magnetic fusion in Europe. So for ITER, Europe is one single partner. So the full Europe, Europe is a partner, not each of the countries in Europe. And then we have, everything is well organized. So the research on fusion in Europe is coordinated centrally by this consortium called Eurofusion, and Eurofusion in particular buys HPC resources. So this has started now almost 10 years ago. So there was a first supercomputer dedicated for fusion in Jülich in Germany. So this was then a part of the cluster in Jülich, and then the next one was bought by France in the frame of the broader approach. This was a deal with Japan, so this was then a part of a Japanese big computer. And then now, so this was closed last year, and since now the beginning of the year, we have a new supercomputer, which is again part of a bigger installation in Bologna, so at Cineca in Italy, and this is the cluster we're using for the moment. So the first phase is already installed. So we had mostly CPUs. So you see 1,500 nodes of classical Broadwell Intel CPUs, and also a quite large share of KNL. So this is being used. So we allocated resources for both. And now, just a few months ago, the second phase has been installed. These are Skylake processors. So then now we're moving from the Broadwell to the Skylake. And here I want also to emphasize what the previous speaker said. So we have these resources. In particular, we have the Nightland. But in the Fusion communities, most of the codes have been developed by single physicists, and these are often legacy codes, quite old. And what we noticed is that KNL, the resources here are mostly unused. So in practice, we have only 40% of usage of the KNL nodes. So this means that 60% of the compute time is not used. And even for the 40% that is used, if we look at, if we talk to people, we notice that they use it, of course, because the queue is not long. There's nobody who wants to use it, so you can get it on it immediately. But the problem is they are very far from utilizing it with good flops. So it's very far from peak performance, and the codes are mostly not optimized for KNL. So this is what I consider at the moment the biggest problem we have here with HPC resources. We have physics codes, new architectures, but there is a team, I will talk a little bit later, that helps users port to this architecture, but it's not adapted to the size of the problems. And for the moment, the resources are not used as they should be. So in order to help us, so it's not like we're only buying resources and have nothing to help users. So we have this high-level support team, which is localized also in Garching, and it's a support unit. So there is a call once a year, and people can ask this unit to help them port the code, for example, to KNL or do other optimization. So this has existed, which is natural since we have the Eurofusion HPC resources. So this is really not focused on its own research, but it's working on projects in order to optimize code. So it's really support for code development, parallelizing, and porting to new architectures. But when we see the usage and what's happening, this is clearly not in phase with the needs that we have. Okay, so more my own work. So I'm leading this NMPP division. This is an applied math division at the Max Planck Institute for Plasma Physics, and we're trying to develop new models and new algorithms to develop reliable and fast code. But we're more focused on the algorithmic side than on the implementation even though this is of course necessary, but the work we've been doing up to now is more numerical in the algorithmic sense than porting to the HPC architecture, which is still another job. So, but what we do quite a lot, and we have seen at the beginning that this was an issue in the Fusion community, so rigorous modeling and analytical theory for code verification. So code verification and validation, of course, I guess everybody recognizes it's very important, but because Fusion science was driven by the physicists with their own codes, they have not seen always the need, or at least not enough the need for doing code verification. Now we have started some more wide-scale code verification effort in the European Fusion community, and then also we want to develop naturally more stable methods, so as we will see later. So we work a lot on structure preserving discretizations because we have long time problems, and energy conservation and other conservation properties play an essential role, and for this we try and find algorithms that work. And also, because we have to solve this phase space problem, so we work in high dimensions, we are trying to find new algorithms that are better suited to this 6-dimensional phase space. And of course, we work also on code optimization and parallelization, and we provide expertise in applied math and a little bit HPC for other divisions of IPP, and of course also for the European Fusion community. So the codes we're writing for the moment are mostly in object-oriented Fortran with MPI and OpenMP. And as I said, so the codes are more test beds, because the physicists generally have their own codes, and we help them by first designing the algorithm in our code and then help them implementing them, or give them the good algorithm. So we developed several libraries for kinetic and gyrokinetic, and also for fluids, so finite element algorithms for MHD or discontinuous Galerkin. Okay, a few words on MHD simulation. So what is specific in Fusion, as I said before? So this is for tokamak simulation. So basically we have this axisymmetric. So this is a poloidal plan. So if you have this one plan, and then you can prolongate by axis symmetry the torus. And because of this anisotropy, it's very important to have the mesh which is aligned to the magnetic field's flux surfaces. So this is the surfaces you see. So grid generation is an important piece of the work, and of course before we design the grid, we have to compute an equilibrium and adapt the grid to the equilibrium, and then compute instability. So there is here one code, which is the MHD code, which uses Bézier finite elements in the poloidal plane, so they were seeing, and Fourier expansion in the other direction. And here, because we're interested mostly in long time applications with the MHD code, we use implicit schemes with GMRS and adequate preconditionings. And what we've been working on more recently is developing a discontinuous Galerkin spectral element code. So spectral elements means high order finite elements. So this is full MHD, whereas the Jurek code was reduced MHD. And what is important also is this locally field aligned elements, as I said. And we're also developing now compatible finite elements. So for people who have done MHD before, you know, for example, that divergence B equals 0 is essential. And now there is a new paradigm for finite elements where you have different finite element spaces for the different unknowns, and by choosing this right, you can get at the discrete level good properties. And including divergence B equals 0 exactly. And then of course we need to have good linear solvers, because this is an implicit code, so we have multigrid algorithms preconditioning to make the hyperbolic system parabolic again, and in order to get the curl problem, so decompose the problem in order to make the linear solves more efficient. Okay, and so as an alternative to this finite element code, so the production code is the Jurek code, but now we have this DG algorithm. This solves the full Maxwell's equation and scales very well. So this is a spectral element DG. This means that we work with polynomials of degree 6, 7, 8 approximately, and it solves the full resistive MHD, so it's semi-implicit. And we want to see the advantages of DG versus the standard Jurek. It's not completely implicit as opposed to Jurek, and it usually solves the full MHD equation. So, and when we have DG, we have locally polynomials, but we have discontinuities at the end interfaces, and then we compute fluxes between the domains, like in finite volume schemes. And the nice thing about discontinuous Galerkin is it's quite easy to implement non-conforming finite elements, because we just need to separate the fluxes. So this makes it a very flexible tool for MHD computations. And the other nice thing about this high-order discontinuous Galerkin scheme. If you have enough work, it scales almost up to 1 cell per core. So if you have 1 cell, because you have enough work, you have high-order polynomials. If you have 1 cell per core, you get a perfect strong scaling, which is quite interesting. And then, of course, you can see in some cases here, because of cache effects, you get more than 100% scaling speed up if you have enough work. So you need at least 1 cell per core, and then it works quite well. And here you see so one difficult work we have to do also is this mesh generation. So we start from some equilibrium on a cylinder, so we have a cylindrical representation, and then we map it either on a torus, axisymmetric torus for the tokamak, or on a stellarator geometry, as you see. And there we need external equilibrium tools, and then we have mappings. So the mappings are defined also by polynomials of high order. So the mapping is defined in the same way as the unknowns are represented in the discontinuous Galerkin scheme. Now, the harder part, so the Vlasov equation. So the equation in principle is quite simple. It's just a transport equation, scalar transport equation. So F is the distribution of particles in phase space. So the big issue is that it's 6-dimensional. And we can solve it either as a conservation law like this with finite volume type methods, or DG is a way to do it. Or another good way here is to use the method of characteristics. And this is, and then you could use the characteristics either to do a particle in cell method, or you can reinterpolate on the grid, and then you get what is called a semi-Lagrangian method. And then a tool that we're using a lot for the modeling is this action principle. So as I said, because we're doing long-time simulation, energy conservation and conservation of invariance is the main tool that we're using when we develop approximate model, and also when we develop numerical approximations. So we start from this Lagrangian that you recognize. You have the particle parts, and then you have the electric field and magnetic field there, based on the potentials. And because we have this large magnetic field, we have a reduced model that is used all the time in magnetic fusion. It's the gyrokinetic equation. So this is a change of variable, so that you can average the particle motion along this field lines, and you replace the real particle motion by the motion of the guiding center. So you just approximate the center of the trajectory of this gyrating trajectory. So this is quite complicated, but at the end, when you do this, you gain 1 dimension. So you have only a 5D phase space, and it's even better than this, because in the 5D phase space, you have 1 invariant and only 4 dynamical variables. So you reduce the model from 6D to 4D plus 1. So the grid is still 5D, but the dynamics is 4D. And then the nice thing is that this gyrokinetic theory fits into our Lagrangian structure, so we can put all the approximation in our action principle, and then we derive the gyrokinetic, the self-consistent electromagnetic gyrokinetic model from this action principle, giving us the conservation laws we need for long time simulation. And what's even nicer, we recently discovered that this could be maintained at the discrete level. So at the continuous level, all these things, so for the Vlasov-Maxwell equation, you can find a canonical structure, so non-canonical Hamiltonian structure. So you have a Poisson bracket, which is not just the canonical bracket, but a more complicated bracket. And here at the discrete level, you represent this by a system which looks like the Hamiltonian system, but the J matrix is not just the symplectic, so the canonical J that you see here, but depends on the variable. So this is called the Poisson structure. And the Vlasov-Maxwell equations fits at the continuous level in such a structure, and by doing an appropriate discretization, so particle in cell, but with compatible finite elements. So this is a new class of finite elements that has been introduced about a decade ago. We can find a discrete Poisson structure. So this is one of the main things we discovered in the past years. And the nice thing is that once you have understood this, you just pick your finite element approximation of the different fields and potential in the right space. You do your particle approximation of F, and you put everything into your Lagrangian. And then you do the Euler-Lagrange equations, and then you get equations of motions, not only for the particles, but also for the finite element coefficients of the electric field and magnetic field. And this is the nice thing. Now we have our discrete equations, because before people were just separating completely the field calculation and the particle advance. Now we couple everything, and now we have a very big system for all the particles plus the finite element coefficients for E and B, which fits into this Poisson structure. And the Hamiltonian is what you expected. So here with the kinetic energy, electric energy, magnetic energy, the matrices you see here are the mass matrices of the finite elements. And then everything fits into this nice Poisson structure, and this Poisson matrix is what you see here, where you have discrete curls, discrete divergences, discrete gradients, and the metric, because we have metrics in it, are all hidden in the mass matrices of the finite elements. So this is quite powerful. Only 2 minutes? Okay. Yeah, maybe I've been a little bit too enthusiastic, because hardly halfway. Okay, so we have this nice Poisson structure, and then we keep the invariance divergence B equals 0, the Gauss's law, are natural Casimirs of our Poisson structure, which is quite nice. And then we can do time advance using Hamiltonian splitting. So this is the one thing I liked, and then we get nice results. Okay, so I go fast over the PIC codes. What I wanted to talk also is, here we've developed a 6D Vlasov-Poisson solver on a Cartesian mesh. We optimized for night landing, and this works quite well. So we get very good efficiency there. And what is nice also, by having optimized it, vectorized for night landing, it works also a lot better on the Xeon processor. So we have very good, strong scaling results. And to conclude, what I wanted to say also is that so in addition to having a full 6D grid, which works, and we can optimize, it might be better for real applications to try and find reduced structures. And the reduced structures we've been looking at are sparse grids and also hierarchical Tucker decomposition. So you can find, sparse grids, most of you know. I just say a short word on the tensor decomposition. So we have our 6D functions, and we decompose at each time between 2 groups of functions. And then this is called matricization, and then we can do a singular value decomposition. And keeping only a few singular values enables us to reduce quite a lot the information stored without compromising the accuracy a lot. And this we can do in a binary tree manner. So we have 2 groups of variables, and then between these 2 groups we still separate, and then again until we only have 1 variable on each side. And and this works very well. So here this is the singular value decomposition. You see for this simple function, so a Gaussian, you see that by keeping only 1 singular value, the error that you get is about 4%. If you keep 2 singular value, you're about 10 to the minus 3 error, and if you keep 5 singular values, which is not a lot, you have 10 to the minus 6. And then the number of data you keep is a lot smaller. Of course, this becomes more complicated when turbulence occurs. Here it's a fairly smooth function, but still we can, for long-term simulations, we get a reduction. Now here we see for the typical gyrokinetics, so this is not a result of a computation, but just a result of a computation using the tensor, the hierarchical tensor idea, but just doing the SVD of a completed gyrokinetic simulation. We see that keeping only 4% of the initial size, we get completely the right structure. So this tells us that this should work. And here we see results comparing the hierarchical tensor to a full grid, and we get for academic cases almost the same thing. Okay, and then the little problem we have is the compression depends a lot on the magnetic field. So for very large magnetic field, we have a lower compression than for no magnetic field. Okay, and then ordering of variables matters. And I'll conclude. Okay, so magnetic fusion research is a hard topic. This is what I learned, and there's a strong need for HPC and applied math to complement the efforts of the physicists, and this in a coordinated manner. So because the problems are getting so complicated that the physicists cannot do as well the complicated physics, the algorithms, and also implement it for the new architecture. So we need specialized people, and they need to talk to each other. So this is one of the important things. We want ITER to work. This is one of the bases we need to set to get this. And we need to really also, because of the complexity of the problems, we need to find new algorithms beyond standard finite differences on Cartesian grid, and we need to have also ways to efficiently use the resources that we have. This is essential, and the verification also I wanted to point out is very important, and we need modern software engineering concepts. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Merci. Perhaps if there's a very quick question and response, we could fit it in.
Have you any results on inertial confinement?
Yes, so we are not working at all on inertial confinement, but there is an experiment working at Livermore in the United States, and yes, people are doing it.
Okay, Eric, I think we're going to have to move on. Thank you very much. I don't quite dare ask you when this will be ITER will be ready and.